I'll record that for you.
Great.
All right, so we are recording. There we go. So I'm just going to start off and screen share a short agenda. And then what I'll do is, it's not going to follow a PowerPoint. It's just, I'm going to flip over to some of the reference material, the portal itself where we raise capital, and our real estate arm, which is Kingwell Fine Homes, where our end product is now being built. So just to recap on my statement about being on time and happily in a position where we're comfortable, it's because that our projects have not been overly delayed by COVID-19. As a disclosure statement, we do this with every presentation. You know, we are very empathetic to all of the businesses and individuals who have been affected by either health, death, or financial wealth reasons with COVID-19. And we take no pleasure in any benefits that it seems to be pushing towards our business model. But COVID-19 is proving to add a very, very strong set of proof to our thesis in our business model. So I want to do that first. I want to talk about our business model and just kind of update you. And for some of you, remind you of the fact that we started this business model 4 years ago. We started our raise last summer as far as soliciting the distribution through Keyspire and other groups. But we came up with this 4 years ago. So the first one I'll turn to is just our map. There's a few versions of this which are on the portal. If you take the time to go on the portal, you can go on and actually click on a paper copy of the map or a PDF copy. But I'll walk you through our live version, which is, you know, where we started to map out the different economic engines that were happening in Ontario and the rationales of where we were. And these aren't long presentation points, but bear with me. If you have a question, happy just to queue in. There's only 9 or 10 of you, so if you want to queue in, that's fine by me. So just kind of going around the horn here, we know this triangle, everybody knows this Greater Toronto market, and there was this line that kind of existed here where people would get out to as far as the Milton area, and then all of a sudden it would then kind of disperse out a little bit, and that would be, you know, Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph, Hamilton. It would kind of just start going because that's the way the highway system goes. It's the path of least resistance. This is, you know, real estate 101, I think, for most people. Location, 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 great, but also how do I get back and forth from where I want to be, drive till I can afford, all of that, different ways that people then choose the market. There was a natural growth going out here to Oshawa that was kind of moving out, and then there was a natural growth that was kind of coming down into obviously the KW area. What we said about 4 years ago, and even longer now, when I go back to meetings, we were looking for when this triangle would flip over so that the triangle then would cover more of the area coming this way. And that's what happened probably in the last 4 or 5 years. So again, I'm preaching to the choir for the most part when you have an operation that's based out of Cambridge for so many years and so many roots in Guelph, Ontario, where you still have bidding wars going on in the midst of COVID with condos at $40,000 or $50,000 over asking in Guelph. And we all know what that does, is it pushes people out and they have to go to lower price markets, especially those people who made a choice in life that their lifestyle was more important than the location. And that was a big thing for our thesis, was that there's a certain point in the cycle for the real estate in Ontario where people can leave Toronto and move out because they can. And there's 2 reasons that they can. One, the availability of market, which of course is all of the projects that are being developed everywhere. And the other one is affordability. They could take either their savings, or their savings plus working remotely, or their savings plus working and driving and commuting, or just taking equity out of Toronto and placing it into a lower price market. So we've seen this happen for, you know, every generation it happens. It's just right now with COVID-19 happening, it's starting to accelerate that. So we're really happy that everything that we identified 3 and 4 years ago and then used to initiate our product launch last fall is still holding true today. And I'll start by picking on the Niagara Peninsula, because we looked at the Niagara Peninsula and we said, you know what, it's very cyclical. You know, what if tourism stops? There was this passport issue with the US not that many years ago after 9/11. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but after 9/11, they went into this whole thing about having to have a passport to get across the border, and a lot of Americans didn't have a passport. So all of a sudden it shut down tourism for a couple of years, and the buses stopped coming. Oktoberfest, I was an Oktoberfest director at the time. Oktoberfest used to get like 30, 40 buses in from the US. We got like 3 or 4 coming in. So it made a huge impact on the economic model. And then the other market that there is just retirees. And we're like, well, we're not that familiar with the market. It's kind of crossing the line here of traffic for us to get over there. So there's a physical impairment. And I've never met anybody, and I don't want to offend anybody, and I'll disclose this as I've done many times in my presentations. Down here's a little town in Wainfleet, Ontario, and Welland, Ontario. Well, half of my family is from Wainfleet area, and half is from Wingham up in this area. So I can say this. Nobody I know wants to live in Wainfleet, except for my 10, 12 relatives that live there. I've yet to meet anybody at any real estate session anywhere where you say, hey, I got a great piece of property in Welland. Do you want to go retire there? Nobody's doing that. Now, in Port Colborne, there was a good story there. We looked at property there. We looked at Crystal Beach. We looked at these areas. And one of the reasons that we stopped looking at Port Colborne was because of the way that it was being built out in the geographical challenge of getting back to Toronto and the GTA. So I'll stop in that. I'll stop picking on the area by just saying, a year after we said, no, we don't really like this area, we walked away and we said, we're going to concentrate on the area we know best, which is west of the 401. They stopped funding the Port Colborne Hospital. And to us, that was another huge checkbox in our business model. So after we determined that the Kitchener-Waterloo area was growing well enough, we had presence down in London, we have presence in Kitchener-Waterloo, we've got a property in Hamilton, I'll go through some of these. After we determined this area was growing enough that it's going to start pushing people into these lower market where we can buy in rural communities where we can buy land at way below urban prices. We then looked at hospitals and services, but mainly healthcare, and said, there's no way we're going to put any money into land where there's not a funded hospital. At the time, Port Colborne was still funded, and then they defunded it and they've closed it. So that was a year after we made our decision. There's a little bit was gut feel, a little bit was, I don't know, just we didn't want to be involved in this area because we didn't really know the area well enough. But a lot of it was hedged on the fact was the people's willingness to move into an area where you no longer have access to maybe arts and entertainment, sports. You know, you got a little bit of Buffalo, but you know, come on, unless you're a football fan, there's not a whole lot left of Buffalo in that area. So we really kept our shift and focused on over there. So when we overlay our SG Regot, I've lost my. Sometimes I do screen share. I lose my. Oh man. Let me see if I refresh it and see if it comes back. It'll lose my layers for some reason. I don't know why it does that.
Blame Zoom.
Yeah, I generally use Teams now because we've used it in our office, but.
Yeah, we like Teams. We use it a lot.
Let's see if I turn this off and if I can work with it, I'll get. One more button, see if it'll, there we go. And this will be for all of you that, you know, met me at the summits or you've seen our material previously or any of the interviews, you attended our martini night that we had in, I think that was in Niagara Falls. We hosted you guys up for martinis. You know, this was the pattern, right? There's that triangle flipped over. There's the baseline of the 401 traffic where people will drive out to. You can see it pointing towards Woodstock and back really up to Georgetown and the Mississauga, or sorry, the Milton area. And then it kind of started pointing up into the north part of Waterloo where there was a tremendous amount of job creation and there's a tremendous amount of university activity. But it's expensive. Our prices are all over the map. There's downtown Waterloo projects now that, you know, they're listing in the $600, $700, $800 per square foot for 600 square foot little condos. And 2 years ago, when we started to see some of these numbers, we said, no, we can't afford to get into bidding wars for land. We just don't have we don't have the risk tolerance or the equity to be able to risk that, to put, you know, $8-9 million into just a postage stamp. So again, we continue to look at areas out here, and we looked at areas that have funded healthcare, that had high-speed fiber feeding into the community, and most important, jobs. And I've obviously in our presentation, we talk about this martini glass shape that is created with the baseline, the path of least resistance out of a community. and then the kind of triangle that creates where people will start to travel and commute, because the commuting is less about going day to day for their job and more about just getting back to a city center. So when you live on this area up here, you can get to the north side of Toronto in less than 2 hours. You can get to the Kitchener-Waterloo in an hour and a half. You can get down to London in an hour and a half, depending on which end of the triangle you're at, of course. And you have healthcare, major healthcare in these cities. Obviously Toronto, but even Kitchener-Waterloo and London has major healthcare centers. So for the most part, everything you need, you can get back to this line here. But our job creation, you know, absolutely, again, on our economic drivers, if it comes up on here, yeah, there's the Bruce Power Plant. So you got the tourism, the fishing, and the sailboating, and the swimming, the beaches and stuff along here. But Bruce Power Plant is 5,000 jobs, and COVID-19 has not disrupted that, because it's a government sponsored retrofitting infrastructure investment by the federal government and the provincial government. You've got a liberal federal government and a conservative provincial government, both of which are not going to ever want to be the bad guys after they've already said they're going to convert this power plant and retrofit and improve the power plant to operate for the next 40 years. And it takes us out to 2060, I believe is the date. And those 5,000 additional jobs on top of the 5,000 jobs created there translate into 28,000 new jobs in the Grey Bruce area over the next 10 years. We're 1 year into those projections and those numbers. When we first looked at it, we looked at it 3 years ago, and we said, okay, well, what if the government pulls back? Well, they didn't. All the contracts were signed, all the media, you can look at media releases everywhere. And then we got a hold of a letter from the president of the union to the president of the pension fund that basically reaffirmed our numbers at the 5,000 number that we had projected. And they laid it out as 1,000 new jobs per year, which for us kind of goes back to the root of diversification. You know, if they were going to try and add 5,000 jobs at once, they wouldn't be able to do it. It would be ridiculous. They couldn't do that. You can't ramp up that fast. Plus, there's no housing available now. You look at articles all over the place that you'll see that this whole area is booming, despite some of the, I guess, disruptions of things with S&V Lavalin, which made the news a little bit. It's completely going. You can't rent anything up here. Every spare bedroom, basement, you know, bedroom, purpose-built apartment, everything's rented. And in any place where there's any motels or hotels, it's just lined up with 4x4 pickup trucks from all of the jobs that are going to the people who are working to actually on the construction to expand and retrofit the Bruce Power Plant. So when you're in Port Elgin or Southampton, it's a huge driver. So this market here, we currently own our Southampton property, which is in the Riot, the Orange. We also own two single lots in Southampton in Port Elgin that we're building demo houses on. I'll show you the demo house in a second. And then we have a Market Street, which is 15 Market Street, which is a 168 units condos. So we're going to be 4 floors looking over the water, Port Elgin. It's the last 10 acres in Port Elgin that you can get. Let's see if it comes up for us here. That's one of our demo houses. That's one I'll show you today. That's another demo house we'll build. And this is our 10 acres. So there's the marina and there's the beach. And this has all been approved to be redeveloped for the beach with all new beachfront restaurants and whole whack of stuff. We stayed clear of their local council when that was in there. It was a bit of a pitchfork marching fight there at council with all the locals about redeveloping the beachfront. We chose to keep our applications and ourselves away from that until it was settled. Once it was approved, we then went in to put our 15 Market Street approval in, and we've got our 10 acres now going forward. Now, just for clarity, as we talk, the orange one is in the SG Riot, and that's what's available to your members right now. Some of your members last year independently also took part in the 15 Market Street. So we have, I think, about 8 investors from credit investors from the membership that joined us on that. But the key point is that every investor in our Spence Street property or in any of our SG Riot properties has first right of refusal on all of the units as we sell them. So every member gets a notification that says this unit is now up for sale. There's a few week waiting period. Anybody contacts our sales team, they go on first, they get first shot at it. If it doesn't have anybody contact them, and then it goes on MLS, just gets put out to the marketplace. So even though Spence Street and Wingham, which will be part of the RIAT, Ingersoll, which is part of the RIAT, and our Beach Street one, which I'll talk a little bit more detail of in a few seconds here. So far what I've covered is hopefully that you can see where our business plan, the flop of the triangle, this is the technology triangle getting expensive. We looked at where the people are leaving the technology triangle, where can they go? We determined that they don't really want to sit out here in the middle of nowhere. Like Ingersoll's different. You're on the 401 from the highway, you're on the 401 back to Toronto. You can be an hour, you're almost at the Toronto airport. You can be an hour and 20 minutes, I should say. In Hamilton, you can be less than an hour to the airport. You can even be in the Niagara area if that's your choosing, but you can be right on the 401. So we have our 16 units in Ingersoll up for sale right now. Those houses are being built, and I'll show you some pictures of that. So we determined nobody really wants to live in the middle here. Like you're landlocked in the middle of nowhere in farm country. Wingham is a unique example where we are able to develop and sell off lots and still make our rate of return, which is not in our RIAT yet, but it's slated to be part of the RIAT soon. And then of course, Spence Street. So that's our basic thesis on the business plan. Just reiterating and around the hub here, immigration, of course, drives Toronto. Migration out of Toronto starts to drive the secondary markets. And as these markets are swelling, people have to go places, and they're going to go someplace where there's a lifestyle that they enjoy, waterfront, and where there's jobs. Bruce Power Plant, 28,000 jobs over the next 10 years. And COVID-19 has not disrupted that because these jobs are not being disrupted. There is no slowdown on that retrofitting, regardless of what COVID's done to the economy currently. So I'll bounce from there. I'll leave that. I want to talk about our capital need. So I'll bring up our existing portal, or the portal, I should say, not existing portal, but our portal. So this is our front funder portal, which is done through SMB Capital. And SMB Capital is a registered exempt market dealer. So for those who got on the call at the very beginning, I was speaking to the point of people, investors and members, they're commenting that, hey, you're at 5 million of 7.6. This is a robot. It's just a computer. So what this can't tell you is that we're actually at 6.145 when you add them together, that we have 600,000 already pledged from a project that I ran with City View Village in Guelph from our investors who put that up, and then we're building 28 affordable townhomes in Guelph, and that's finishing right now. We're just finished building it. So investors are moving from that project and over here, and it leaves us with about $1 million of room, just under $1 million of room, about $900,000 of our 7.6. What we really need to articulate right now is that Hamilton is going to be added to the portfolio, and Hamilton is a $4.5 million project. Hamilton, if we go back to my map and talking about moving west, Hamilton is a unique situation that we have that just, and I'll show you some pictures of it in a second, that is just a really nice piece of property that we had already owned, and we've just been working through the process. Now that we've got it to the point where we are there, we want to be able to free up capital so we can move on to other projects. And this is where we want to bring our investors now, or our opportunity to the members into there. So it's 4.5 plus our 7.6 is 12.1. For the most part, our materials have always reflected right here. That says 12, but 12.1. Our funding schedule. And this is the part where I was referring to earlier that most of the time, and not every time, so there's certainly good issuers out there who are fully transparent, but you might not even see this. You would just simply see, I'm raising $12.1 million and your maturity is 5 years. And as you put your $100,000 in, or your 10,000 or your 25,000, you would never see this. You wouldn't know what they're at. You could ask them and they might tell you honestly, or they might just tell you, yeah, we're almost there. We're almost there. So we're having some of the members who have asked us, you know, what if they don't get to 7.6? Will this collapse? And that's honestly not been asked very often. That's a pretty harsh word, but you know, the black swan is no, Actually, no, we've already secured everything. Just that the amount of equity that we want to have in the project allows us to give that decent rate of return. If we go more equity, then we would not be able to hit the returns for investors. If we go less equity, we run the risk that we will not get the lowest financing rates because we would have to use maybe non-traditional financing. So the equity amount of 12.1 million spread over the 4 properties that we've identified gives us the ultimate amount of equity to be able to move the project forward. And to me, that's something that most investors, maybe some of the members, really need to embrace, is that you want to work with people who don't blindly say, give me all your money today. Don't worry. I'll tell you how I'm going to use it later. We're telling them up front how we're using it. We're showing them the actual outlay. This will change, by the way, because we're swapping Wingham down. Wingham has got some planning hurdles that we need to overcome. It's nothing, the approval's in place. We've already got site plan approval there, but we have to get past a change in the plan. We want to put some purpose-built rentals on the property. In order to do that, we've got to add a timeline to it to be able to go to council. It's already pre-discussed, pre-approved, but it means we're going to fund Hamilton first. So we'll slot Hamilton up and we'll start funding Hamilton across, and we'll just change our diagram. So it's really important that the members understand that it's not just a cut a check, sign a piece of paper, throw it in the fund, and receive back a piece of paper that says, your target rate of return is 12% in 5 years. We want our investors, our investors to understand, why we're taking capital in and how they're going to get it back. So before I go into the individual projects and some of the supporting documents, I want to talk about the exit strategy, because the exit strategy is the inverse of this. The exit strategy is very simple. Every time we sell a house, or we sell a lot, or we sell a part of the property or the whole property, capital has to go back to the investor. We can't just roll capital into someplace else. We can't swap properties. We have a stringent set of rules that isn't governed by 5 trustees. I'm a trustee, Randy Von Haken's a trustee, but we're also part of the general partnership. That's not good if you're an investor, but the same 2 guys who own the general partnership with the other general partners are the trustees. So we added 3 more independent trustees, 3 chartered accountants who have their designations and their professional careers to be concerned about. And that's what you want. You don't want people to have the keys to the bank accounts who don't have something to lose. So our 3 trustees have set the rules in place that reinforce by design, by what I designed, so that as soon as we have money coming back, and when I get into the projects, you'll see some of the houses being built. As soon as the houses are sold and there's money sitting in the project account that is not necessary for continuing the build, then that money is returned to the trust and back to the investors. We call it flow through, flow through. When you invest money, you invest into the trust, and the trust then puts the money out via the trustees' approval to the projects based on our schedule, based on our approval process, and based on the project being ready. And then when the project is being built and the houses are being sold, then money is going to be deemed to be surplus if there's no need for working capital. And that money has to flow back to the trust, and it can't sit in the trust. It has to flow back to the investors. So flow through simply means that you have these periods of time, 30-day windows, where if all of a sudden there's $1 million sitting in the trust and we can't place it, then it goes back to the investors. And if there's $1 million of profits returned or return of capital sitting in the trust, then we have 30 days or to the end of the quarter to distribute it back out to the investors. We have to deem it somehow. So if it's midway through a quarter, we deem it by that quarter, and then that's it. But we have to make a decision in that 30-day window. And again, that's having trustees who then have myself and my partners handcuffed, that we can't just go and say, oh, well, nobody's really watching. We'll just move that $1 million from Ingersoll sales down to our Hamilton project. It can't happen. So that's caused, in some scenarios, it's caused a few questions that some of the members have raised, because they don't completely maybe appreciate from our perspective how being diversified and participating from our adjusted cost base, which is our price we paid for the land plus our cost to get it to the next phase. There's no lift, of course. We don't do any lifts. That they're participating with us from a point where we've deemed the property to be de-risked. And then as soon as we start to sell the property, they start to return capital. It's indifferent to which property starts first or which property sells first. So whether we're building in Southampton or building in Hamilton or building in Ingersoll, whichever houses start to sell first will be money that's being returned. So flow through, in our opinion, is hugely advantageous to a member investor, on top of the diversification in geographical area. And of course, which I'll get to, in the style of the home. Like, to us, style of home is paramount. We only really like low rise, low risk, under 4 stories, where there's jobs, where there's healthcare, where there's a lifestyle, retirement, or younger. You could be 40, 45 and decide that you can work completely remotely. We're all sitting on this. I'm the only one in an office, apparently. So everybody else is working remotely, and that's proven to work. So let me just bounce over back here. So we have some supporting media and resources that we've been watching. Now, these are the most recent ones I'm going to share with you, and you can I can forward the links on as well after I re-forward the recording along, and I'll just kind of jump into them. One of the first ones was we liked. This is a CTV news one that I think this is June 14th, so that's pretty recent. COVID has pushed some Canadians' need to leave the city behind, and there's several articles like this out there. Remember, I ask you to remember. I shouldn't say remember, but I ask you to remember that our business plan was 3-4 years ago, and we started to say, okay, we're already seeing the push from immigration and migration, and the need to take equity out of the GTA or out of the core of Kitchener-Waterloo or Cambridge or Toronto or Hamilton and Burlington. And COVID-19 has come along and basically given everybody a little push. And hey, have you thought about changing your lifestyle? Can you afford to make a move? Are you portable? Could you sell your $1.5 million house in Toronto and buy a $500,000 house in Ingersoll or Port Elgin and bank that other money and retire early? People always need a little push. It's called the why in the road in financial planning. They get to a certain point and they stop and they look for somebody to help them to make that next decision. So what they are talking about now is what didn't exist, for them before, which was the push. The fact that we're creating inventory in attractive markets, we're not the only ones. There's other projects, of course, spread around the Great Lakes that are selling the same story, whether it's Port Colborne or it's Sarnia or it's Grand Bend. There's all kinds of people talking about those areas. We just think that we picked an area that has the jobs, that has the lifestyle, it has the accessibility back to the 401 corridor without traffic, and it has a very attractiveness. So again, these articles are out there. There's lots of them. This one was just saying how people fall in love in small town vibe. So they said, I didn't realize I could live out in a small town. Now keep in mind, perspective for us, with our 4 projects plus our Port Elgin property, which is 5 projects, and even if we add in our single home and our rental that we're building in London, Ontario, we only need about 500 purchasers over the next 5 years. So we're not talking about trying to convince all of the GTA and Oakville and Burlington to pick up and move away. We're talking about disturb and motivating people who have the ability to sell their real estate that they've made good money on, who want to have lifestyle change, who want to have something that's maybe perceived to be more aligned culturally with where they want to live, or more aligned with socially with where they want to live, because they just don't want to live in a 200 person building or 2,000, even worse, a 2,000 condo building downtown Toronto. They just don't want to be in that situation. And COVID-19, of course, is adding to that angst. This article came up from New York, obviously a little bit harsher. Families fleeing the city are pushing up home prices in tight supply. And this was the boroughs. This was New York City. And it was just talking about, people just trying to get out of New York City, and how the prices were starting to be pushed out because people were doing that natural migration again, which we've seen for years out of Toronto, pushing up prices in places like Guelph, Ontario, and Georgetown and Cambridge. And now it's just the next wave, if you will, is pushing even further out. Cottage country. So there's a bit of a news story video on CTV. I think this is CTV. Yes, CTV. Rather than being stuck in the city, Canadians are choosing to enjoy nature while still being able to work remotely. So this is that third leg of the stool when I talk about three markets that drive. It's people want lifestyle, they want to retire, or they just simply have the ability to work differently. And everybody's getting that firsthand experience of working differently for the last 3 months. So we really need to run off this marketing message, and we need to spread the word, either through our SG Riad or our Kingwell Fine Homes, that it's okay to consider leaving the city, selling your place there, and move places where before you thought, yeah, there's nothing there. But I guess people have started to see that if you have online shopping and door-to-door delivery, and I have high-speed internet, I actually can survive in other places, because now I can redirect resources to my time to drive to the city for theater or for sports or for shopping if I need to do that, or whatever it might be. So there was that article in there, and then there was a great quote, I believe, in this one. Yeah, there's not enough properties for sale for the buyers. And I apologize, I didn't highlight this because it's actually a live link. Take up time. There was some good art. There's some quotes in there, some good quotes. This one here, the retirement baby boomers multiplying millennials. So this one, sounded like it was going to talk about people moving to the cities, because it says shift towards denser cities and suburbs. But when you tear apart the article, and it's not, this is the interpretation from our research. When you tear apart the article, it actually adds to our thesis that people, sure, there's this kind of polarization that's happening. We're living partly in a city in a tight subdivision with houses side by side, or living in a condo, or do I move out of the city completely? So as some generation from the millennials still want to live in the action downtown, the retirees are seeing their highest equity values ever, and they have an option now. And this is to our credit again from 3-4 years ago, saying there'll be a time when the boomers, and again, not all of them, but we only need like a small percentage of the boomers to say, yeah, I'll take that condo in Southampton because I want the condo living, but I don't want it downtown Toronto. Or I don't want to be just on the outskirts in Toronto where I'm just in a asphalt city. So we feel that the demographics as they're mapping it out, Toronto's going to continue to be a heck of a market. Same with Kitchener-Waterloo, I'm sure. But I can't afford the postage stamp in there and to take that risk. But these people have to go someplace, and they just keep going further and further out, which is, again, just goes back to our thesis on the way the migration patterns are going. This is our Kingwell Fine Homes site. So when you think of SG Riat, and if you see some of our banners and posters at the summit, you'll see on the SG Riat banners and material, it says SG Riat, and then it says SAM Capital Partners, which is myself and John Chung. We're two of the general partners who bring capital to the table to get these projects off the ground. And then you have the Kingwell Fine Homes group, which is my other partner, Brett Nodwell, who's attended and spoke at your summit, who then gets into the design and sales. So what's going to be the most appropriate community to put on our properties. So those properties I've mentioned on our map, I'll just going to go down to down here, and they reflect again in more of a, obviously, picture presentation on there. So when you start to look at what we're building, a couple of the key points here that I said earlier, which is from the investor perspective, the investors are getting a piece of land, and they're participating from that land price at our cost, plus whatever engineering, but no lift. So we're not saying we're going to put this property in and put our 20% lift on it and flip it around. And trust me, if you don't see this in the industry, you should look closer, because it happens with so many issuers. They buy and sell the land to themselves. They just put the price up. We didn't do that. We're putting the land in at the value we paid for it. Secondly, all of our investors have that first right of refusal. So Ingersoll right now is up and going, and the houses are starting to be put on MLS. As of a couple weeks ago, we just started listing them, started to circulate them to the investors. All of the plans are on here. What I want to point out, it doesn't matter which home plans that somebody chooses. These are all bungalow loft style, main floor living, and every one of them has a double car garage, and every one of them is net zero ready, which means that the purchaser can elect to have solar panels put on, and they just plug and play. the wiring system, the smart home system, everything is ready to go. Every one of them has the conduit and the wire pull in the garage for electric cars. So if somebody wants to buy an electric car in the future, they don't have to go and try and figure out how they're going to get the hydro up to the garage. So these are all main floor living homes. So you see like a 2-story here, it's still the master bedroom still on the main floor. And then you have upstairs extra bedrooms. I may get caught here. One of these might not be. One of these might be an actual 2-story, but I think I'm correct anyway. Let's just say majority of them all are bungalow loft. I love the bungalow loft story. I've used it many times in my presentations. Basically, if I roll up and I've got a double car garage, I got my solar panels on the roof. I've got a footprint that is wide open. The construction methodology is sustainable homes. And on top of that, every one of these has got orange over here. Every one of these has a pre-designed accessory apartment built into the basement. So with a home like this at $649, you've got a 2-bedroom apartment in the basement. You're going to get $1,300 to $1,400 a month rent out of that accessory apartment. If you've come from Toronto, just hypothetically, and you sold your $1.5 million house, you're going to be living in it, mortgage free and drawing income from your tenant. Even if you decide you want to carry some of that, for $1,300 a month, you can carry a $300,000 mortgage right now. So you're going to carry half of that just with the income coming in from the rental. If you want to live in it and use the basement, then don't make it into an accessory apartment right away, but it'll already be wired for you that way. It's already going to have the 2 meters and everything, so you can do it later in life. Because they're bungalow lofts, you can move there with children, put the kids upstairs, if that's the case, or you can move there with no children, live in the main floor and rent out your basement. Or if you got older, the kids are gone, you just use the upstairs bedrooms for your guests and rent out your basement and live in the main floor still. The key there, which obviously I said redundantly, is people want to live on one floor. We're all doing it. I don't know anybody, again, who wants to live in Welland in a 2-story house with stairs going up and down as they get older. It's not appealing. I could be wrong. There could be a whole long list of people that I just don't know. But the important point here on the property itself, it's just off the 401, as I said. It's on a golf course. The hospital is literally a stone throw away. It's right around the block up here. And it's private. This is all private. So there will be a condo fee. It's very minor. It's for grass and garbage and everything and road clearance. But it means that you can live there and contract whoever's doing the snow removal to do your full driveway for you. So you can also have your grass and everything done. So you can live in a house on a nice golf course lot in a private entrance just off the 401. Even if you don't care about what Ingersoll, Ontario has to offer, London's 20 minutes down the road. Hamilton is half an hour to the outskirts of Hamilton and an hour to downtown maximum. Toronto is an hour and 20 minutes. KW is 35 minutes. So there's a ton of potential for people to look at that area. So I just go back to my map for a brief second just to bring you in on that. So when I talk about Ingersoll, I'll give you a little zoom in here. The other thing that was attractive for us is that despite COVID and slowdown and stuff, the CAMI plant is one of the most efficient automotive plants we have in Canada. And then just up the road in Woodstock is the Toyota manufacturing facility, which is up here, a little bit off my screen there right now. And there's our property. Just off the 401 by a kilometer on the golf course. And the hospital is right behind the Elmhurst Inn word right there. Sorry, that's not what I was trying to point out. The hospital's right in behind there. So again, no matter what age you are, you got young kids, you need emergency services right there. You're old, you need emergency services right there. You like to golf, but you want to bugger off in the winter for 3 months? Great, you're on a golf course here. You've got a tenant in your house. In the basement, there's separate entrance and everything. Somebody to monitor the house, make sure the hydro's running and it's not flooding. And you've gone all winter? Perfect. Now you've got a perfect turnkey situation, but you're still living with a yard and you're still living, in some cases, there's even walkout models that you can have a walkout out of it to make it more appealing. So that's the furthest tip of our market right now. And we started here because in the timing, we're looking at the market demand being down the 401 and it taking for another year or so before these jobs are established. And then we timed it out again so that our Port Elgin, Southampton properties are simultaneously coming up. They should both be ready next year to start building on, as would Wingham. And then these jobs are well underway, so that we have a chance, if we needed to, as a defensive mechanism, to change our plans if we had to. Because going in and putting shovel into the ground and something as fast as possible without the jobs being created might not have been a great business decision. We're confident we're on the right path. We're not worried about that. But having a little bit of room to straddle our projects and bring in phases is huge for us. Jason came right into the computer for a second there. Let me go back now just up to where I was on my agenda, sorry. There we go. So there's some supporting media, some supporting story. The capital need in Hamilton is, of course, our story. I'm going to come to Hamilton now. I want to show you and zoom in on Hamilton. Just for those who haven't worked with us, I did put on here number 4 that Pacific Western Trust, of course, was our first preferred trust because they are completely paperless. Olympia Trust, because everybody else has used them over the last number of years. And due to the requests from Keyspire members, we've added Community Trust, which took us 6 months, but it's now officially added. And I just want to add, nothing to do with us, everything to do with trying to work with Community Trust. We're happy to have added them to help your members, but I'll tell you, they're not exactly the fastest place in the world. They certainly don't, hopefully nobody here has a great relationship with anybody there, but very, very slow system for trying to get on board it and trying to get them to use any kind of electronic signature, which I think COVID-19 has also taught every business, hey, time to get up into the 21st century. Nevertheless, on a positive note, Community Trust is now added. So if you have members who are money sitting at Community Trust, we can now take all of them on as well. I pointed out the income and rental units. I'll come back to that. I just want to hit Hamilton for a second. As I was presenting, I skipped Hamilton because I couldn't recall where I had my tab. I couldn't find it, but there it is. So this is Hamilton. So if you're familiar with Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville, this is Toronto skyline, right? That must be Toronto Islands right there, I think, about there. CN Tower's probably someplace right in here. So our property lines here, it's the last 6 residential houses that we've done a land assembly on, right on Beach Boulevard. So this little beach here, which is not Wasaga Beach, I get that. We're not trying to sell it as a beachfront, luxury beachfront. It's luxury townhouses, as close to Burlington address as you can be, but with a Hamilton price. I'll show you some of the pictures here as we go through. So these are all 4-story, so 1, 2, 3, 4, with the rooftop terrace, covered back, so you're deflecting anything from the Hamilton Skyway noise, all that stuff. And then covered terrace looking at the Toronto skyline. So that's pointing back out. So they're all pointing out here, looking out here. The reason that we went with the covered terrace is that you've got this, you see the people, the 2 ladies who are walking. This is a pathway right in front. So the other condos have been built and sold for $1 million 5, 6, 7 years ago, have little courtyards for their barbecue and sitting area, and everybody's looking right into your little courtyard. It was brutal. We looked at that and said, that's crazy. And we love the idea that you can walk across, and you're on the path and you can jump on a bike. You can bike to downtown Toronto. You can bike over Lake to Niagara Falls. You can go all the way to Niagara Falls on the trails that go all around. Or you can walk across and there's 40, 50 feet of sand and you can go for a swim. It's a really neat little location. One of the other things, that's just a rendering of the same thing there. It's a little more in the front, but this is what I'll show you here. Is every one of our buildings, you can't see it in here, but right about here in the back of the garage, so there's your living areas. Right about there in the back of the garage, so you pull in, is an elevator shaft going straight up to your rooftop terrace. So each unit, each of the 15 units has its own elevator shaft designed into the unit. So if an investor, buyer, somebody who wants to live in it, doesn't want to put the elevator in for the $30,000 it costs to install it, they have an elevator shaft. But our theory, again, is that when you're building these homes, not only do we want them to be smart and sustainable, energy efficient, they should be your last purchase home. we're not interested in building spec homes where people are going to just keep flipping and flipping, build them as cheap as you can, and then somebody can rent them later. So we're building a quality home that a young professional could live in and they wouldn't have to leave. A retiree can live in, and no matter what their health condition is, they can still get with the groceries or from the kitchen, sit up their own elevator up to the rooftop terrace.
What's the projected price of these, Doug?
A 1.3. 1.3 million is where we set our pro forma. We actually set our prices at 1.25 when we built the pro forma. 1.35 is what we've been told by some of the agents. That was pre-COVID. We don't expect to have them ready for market until about 2022 would be when they'd be ready for market. So we'd start building next year into the year. And
what's the nearest marina there? I
oh,
imagine you get a lot of people with boats that'll want these places, I would think, right?
it's right behind you.
Across the street.
Yeah, it's a boat launch. There's a marina in here someplace. I don't know where it is, Jason.
Well, there's 50 Point, Jason. There's also the Hamilton Marina that's out near Bayfront Park. It's a little bit further kind of north of here. If you go left in the bay.
Here, right?
But right where the canal lift bridge is, where you can see the canal, you can see the bridge. You see where the canal that comes in, where it joins. There's actually there's actually on this side, on the Hamilton side, there's a boat launch.
Yeah, this is a boat launch here with a research center.
Imagine a lot of your buyers, I would think, are going to be people who sail and boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. The price comparison for people who are anywhere along this year, it really just goes pretty easily. You can't get on the water, Toronto area for.
It's a very yuppie neighborhood, Jason. Just down the road, they've got other new sort of development and whatnot, and it's kind of double income, no kids, yuppie neighborhood, because you've got the beach right there.
Yeah. So I agree with Jason. I mean, there'd definitely be attracted. People with boats would be attracted to it. It might not be our end buyer because we're looking for 15 people who see the value of having the location, accessibility to both sides of the Golden Horseshoe, and also the last home to buy. So I look at somebody from Toronto who's done very, very well in their real estate, and they're like, well, I don't need to be downtown. I can buy this sustained place, still be in the loop here, and get on and off highways and get it out of town. And I can go to Burlington, Oakville and hang out here. But if I try to buy the same place over here, you're basically $2.5 million, $2 million. You can't get the same thing over here as you get over here. So we are only looking for 15 people in this scenario. Now this is our focus right now. And this is where we're trying to change the narrative on our portal to where we are now focused on raising the next $4.5 million, which will bring Hamilton into the portfolio. So for us, it's the diversification play. There's the waterfront view I just want to show you. So little beach area. There's actually more grass and stuff in here than the rendering shows, but that's the other side of the building. When we bring this in there, it's a diversification for geography, of course. You've got our Ingersoll stuff that's ready to go right now. They're building. They're ready to be built. They're ready to be sold. They're ready to go. Beach in Hamilton, we're about 18 months out from the time that somebody can move in by our estimates, which to us seems like exactly the time the swell is going to just start to really peak in Hamilton, where there's enough gentrification happening there, and the new media build that's going in with the new media center and the new media campus that's going to be built, the movie campus and film campus that'll be built, will start to go, and that'll add some attractiveness to the down core area of Hamilton. But our market's not really people who live in Hamilton. It's people who live in the GTA or thought they could live out here. And this is a real story from one of my clients that I've dealt with over years. They bought a place in Niagara-on-the-Lake, lived there for 6 months. Their kids were older, so they said, oh, we can live anywhere we want now. Our kids have moved out. The daughter got married, had a kid, and they said they spent every weekend trying to fight traffic back to Kitchener because now the daughter's got the grandchildren here. This is way more attractive for them if they like this lifestyle coming down Niagara-on-the-Lake area, but they want to be out Toronto and they want to get back to KW. It's a great point. The two stories aren't exclusive of one another. right? The migration is pushing and swelling, pushing people up here because the jobs are here. And Lake Huron is the next best choice to trying to get to the Muskokas. You've got great water, you've got great cottages, you've got every kind, you know, all kinds of amenities and beaches that are along there from the Lambton Shores and Grand Bend all the way up to the Sawal beaches over there. And that's our marketplace. So last thing on my agenda here was the income and the rental units. I just wanted to emphasize again, we have inventory for sale. It's up now. It's not part of our distribution discussions or referral fee base that we currently have, and I'll leave that to Amanda and the team and everybody makes the decisions on that. But right now, all of the REIT investors have first right of refusal on these. But we are very welcome to open up our, you know, have your members know that we're building. This is a completely net zero home being built in Port Elgin. It's one of our demo houses. So this is a fair size home, 700 meters off of the lake at Port Elgin. So just down from our property, we're going to develop into more, into the 168 condos. So this home, and I'll show you in a second, just illustrates our technology. This is ICF floor to ceiling. You have triple pane glass in all of the windows and ICF concrete going up to the second floor. It makes it energy efficient, but more importantly, it makes it quiet. You don't hear the outside world when you're sitting in these homes. So you've sealed them up, you've tightened them up, and you've, of course, for net zero, you've put solar panels on, so you're not paying for electricity. You've got quality living space. You've got a decent lot on this one. Of course, that's not reflective of all our properties, but this single one is being built. I apologize. I thought I had a rendering of it with the, you can see the ICF again, floor to ceiling ICF going up there. Our ICF technology also is not the stuff that bleeds poison into the earth. This is all compacted, and there's no locking, there's no leakage of our ICF or our plastics or foam materials in there. So that's our build partner. That's just a kind of a demo home that we're doing. And then the other one I was going to show you some pictures of. Oh, I showed you Hamilton, pardon me. So Hamilton would be built with similar technology as well, ICF. And then go back now to our page with Kingwell Homes. All of these homes, again, built with the same technology, the sustainability, the triple pane glass, and in these cases, net zero ready to go. The demo home we're building it fully net zero. It's going to be full solar panels. I think that demo home is listed for $790, and you're getting a 2,800 square foot double car garage, net zero, sustainable home, 700 meters off of the marina in Port Elgin. So if you got a buyer for it, happy to take it. The other property that we have, and I'll wrap up here if you have questions, is in London. We're building a fourplex. That's also going to be up. It's $1.3 million for a rental in London. It's right downtown, just over the tracks south in downtown London. Again, being built the same technology, I think, location-wise. Let me see if I got a picture of it. Yeah, there's our fourplex there. So as we build out, you'll see our fourplex models and our net zero homes and stuff being somewhat repeated in style in Southampton. In Wingham, we'll repeat some of the style. My last point about the income potential in the rental buildings, I know a lot of your members really look for those opportunities, is that we will have in Wingham, we'll have 12 plex purpose-built rentals that will be built on that property as well. So they'll be just up for grabs for investors to be able to take. And then in Southampton, we have, I believe it's 30 row houses, stacked townhouses. So there'll be lots of units that would be very appropriate for somebody to buy and use for short-term rentals just off Lake Huron there. So if they want to do short-term rentals for 9 months of the year and then use it for their summer place, they would be completely appropriate for that with no restrictions for people to do that within the area that we have to build it. So that's pretty much my update. I'm running myself out of time here. It's 2:06. Happy to answer some questions if you have questions.
So you're still taking funds. I know originally you're thinking about closing around June or July of this year. So do you have a closing date in mind down the road?
Yeah, so originally we were going to raise for 1 year, and we were launching in the summer last year. We hope to launch by the end of the summer last year and wrap it up within 12 months. Our commitment is still really to only raise for 1 year. And now that we have our 4 properties identified, they're all moving forward. 3 of them are site plan approved. So we de-risked the point that we need to raise our 12.1. So we'll leave the fund open until we raise 12.1. But then that's where we'll stop. Unless something comes along that changes our story. Right now we're aiming for a 12.1. We stop at the 4 properties. We close the fund to any new investors, and we just focus on exiting and getting the capital back to investors.
You were mentioning earlier about I think it was return of capital when you sold units and people moved in and all that. What's the timeline for that? Because some people may ask.
Yep.
And that may be. It's like 2 years out, 3.
Yes. Yeah. Every quarter that we sell any property, so if we turn keys to owners in Ingersoll, which is all up for sale right now, as soon as we close those houses off, we won't need working capital in Ingersoll. We'll start to return capital. We'll start to return the profits. So every quarter, we anticipate after Q1 of 21 was our original date. We're still looking okay. COVID's pretty much shaved off a quarter off of everything that we would talk about now. They're taking 3 months away. But we would, if we sell anything in the ownership is done by the end of this year, we'd have distributions that would be calculated and then be distributed by the end of Q1 of 21. So a year from tomorrow. Yeah. And just a comment on the return of capital versus income. So profits is income. Return of capital has to be accounted for. It's part of our trustee oversight. So every time that we have any sales, we have to take a portion of that and return capital. So if a person's put $100,000 in, and for 3 years we've given a portion of their capital back and exited, the majority of our projects in our homes, it's quite possible they have, between the profit distribution and the capital, they have the majority of their original investment back. And then after that, they'll just be getting distributions, which would represent still some of their units, because you can't give them all the units back. They still have to have ownership, but they'd have the dollar value of what they've invested back, in the inside of 3 years. And that's how we've designed it.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions?
So Doug, my question would be, so call to action. So if a member is, talking about the level of interest, then the call to action just remains to send them to the portal?
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys had, captured quite a few leads when Michael did his phone call and when I did the call with him and the coffee with Michael. Statistically on that, I think if I recall, there was at one point 520 people on the call. And after that, they went into a Keyspire portal first, and then every lead was sent over to us. So as soon as we have the lead, we encourage them to go onto the portal and click the sign up, create their profile, watch the video, read the material. Unfortunately, 50 to 60% of them, they want to do the phone call first, and they haven't done that. But that's fine, because Jeff May and Larry Craig, my office, and Mary Thibodeau, they handle them. Constantly, I hear them talking to your members when I walk the halls here at the office, when I'm in the office. So the preferred is that we educate the members to take that first step of reading through and making sure they have once they have their sign up, like once they've engaged and they've done the sign up, we have their information to contact them then. And it goes right onto our follow-up list. This month right now, we need about another, on top of what we're closing on the screen now, we need about another 900,000. And that equates to about 30 to 35 members. So if there's 35 new members that make up 900,000, they automatically go onto the sheet for follow-up, and either Mary or Jeff follow up with them and make sure that they're not having any difficulties with the actual registration process. And it's a securities transaction. I say this, and I know you know this, but I have to remind any members that I've talked to or investors or distributions, the one important thing that from an education standpoint is that investors always need to remember they're doing a securities transaction. It's not, it's not here's my check and go. And I'd certainly also remind them that it should never be, here's a bunch of documents, sign, and give me your check. So our by doing it on the portal, it forces them to actually go through steps. They have an opportunity to talk to a registered dealing representative, which deals on the securities transaction side, but they also have the opportunity just to hit the buttons down here, which come directly to my team here. So they can do that. And you can always push them to Mary Thibodeau if there is an issue with an existing member who's having any kind of difficulty. For the most part, and I'm not saying that we're perfect by any stretch, we're not. There's always little things that glitchy. But for the most time, 90% of the time, when someone says they're having difficulty or they're not hearing from a representative, it's usually because there's an email or something in their spam or someplace where there's a signature missed, and it's just sitting idle, and they just need that help. And we're happy to do that for them.
And then my other question, Doug, would be around the units and getting some of these units available out to the Keyspire community. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, then I'd say you need to talk to Dave about that.
Okay.
He's kind of taken over SP World in the finance department there. So he'll be able to run through like opportunity size and talk about how to get that in front of the members, whether it be another webinar, email campaign, what have you.
All right, I'll talk to Dave.
Yeah, but it looks like, you've got definitely the inventory and rental potential. Something a lot of our members are getting really excited about is vacation properties as well because of Scott's new show. So you'll see that as a reoccurring theme coming up in the future with Keyspire. So
yeah,
well suited.
We'll have 250 units between Port Elgin and Southampton available, and the single family homes will be ranging from 1,600 to 2,600 square feet, which only represent out of the 250 units 40 units. So the rest are either stacks, towns, or condos. And our fourth floor condos, all 5 buildings have 2 views of Lake Huron in Port Elgin. So they'll be very attractive. It's definitely something we want to get in front of your members.
I'm surprised no one wants to live in. Sorry, go ahead, Mirna.
Yeah, I was just going to say we can consider the way that we present it as options for, vacation rentals, not necessarily this could be your retirement home. Maybe that's a next stage.
Mm-hmm.
But from an investor perspective, if we're speaking to the masses, then they might be buying it for that purpose rather than like the end user purpose.
Yeah, we just on that remark, we have no restrictions or intend to have any restrictions that would be on short-term rentals for our buildings, so that we don't eliminate that market because it's just a big market. So it's municipalities have different rules.
I'm surprised no one wants to live in Minto or Palmerston in that little void there.
Yeah. Well, I remember I always disclose I was born and raised in Wingham, Ontario. And the fact that I got a land deal there now with the owners are actually out of Singapore who bought the land. Wow. And it was just a fluke. I think I've told the story before. I'll shorten it up, but I was on stage in Las Vegas doing pro seminars. So there's 300 financial professionals. 3 years in a row, I get up there and my first line at those sessions was, all right, let's get this out of the way. I'm from Wingham, Ontario, and I have no business being in Las Vegas speaking to you. You're stuck with me for an hour. So at the end of the presentation, this fellow walks up and he goes, "Did you say you're from Wingham, Ontario, Canada?" I said, "Yeah." "And you're Doug Searson?" I said, "Yeah." So, "Well, we have a meeting this afternoon. I've got something for you." And I was like kind of taken. It was a couple of Asian fellows from Singapore that walked up, and so I went up to their suite to have this meeting. And I had a scheduled meeting with this company. I just didn't know. I hadn't met them yet. So when they heard me on stage, I'm like, "Oh, we have a meeting with you." So they bring out this book and they're showing me all the land they own in Canada, and Wingham W was last, of course, in the alphabetical listing of their book. And he's flipping and flipping, and he goes, "Oh, and then we own this property in Wingham, Ontario." So that was 8 years ago. 7 or 8 years ago, and since then this guy has buggered off and left the owners in Singapore who actually own the property with no representation. So now we represent 9 pieces of land in Ontario in that same scenario. So yeah, so yes, I'm very familiar with the no one goes to Wingham, Ontario postal codes that are in that kind of void area. The Wingham housing market, though, for us, there's 200 jobs available in Wingham right now. 3,000 people live there, and they've got ability to build 400 houses on this property we have. So 45 houses a year is what we're looking at just to get things started. And you're a 45-minute drive to Bruce Power, and you're not on the lake, so you're not paying lake prices. You're paying $400,000 for a nice house. Anyway, too much wine. I'm sorry. Questions? I'm happy to wrap it up if that's. I should have stopped recording when I started talking about Wingham too. I didn't want that to be in the record. Oh well.
You're still recording that piece.
So.
That's all right. We won't hold it against you, Doug.
No, I'm quite proud of it.
You should be. For sure.
No, I'm good.
All right, guys. I really appreciate the update opportunity. As I said, we'll start changing our portal and our messaging, and whatever opportunity we have to educate the members, we're happy to take it. We're $5.5 million left of what we need. 4.5 for Hamilton, another $1 million to finish out the original 7.6. So everything's appreciated, and your time, of course, is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And likewise, thank you as well, Doug, for making the time for us and teaching us about your projects as well. I think that's super important that we've got, a higher understanding of what you're doing rather than, go talk to their team. And like I said, for future email campaigns and just pushing out some promotional stuff, just chat with Dave about that, and we can slot that into the calendar.
Excellent. It's good to see all of you too. It's been a while.
Yeah, you too, Doug.
Well,
You, Doug.
Take care.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Have a good one.